Okay, good evening, everyone, and welcome. I'm going to call the January 22nd, 2025 meeting of the Auburn School Committee to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Start down here on my right with introductions.
Quinn Gormley, Ward 4.
Corin McGuigan, Ward 1. Pam Hart, Ward 2.
Pamela Albert at large.
Sue Doris, Superintendent.
Pat Gaudier, Ward 3.
Jay Rich at large.
Adam Platt, City Council Representative.
Calvin Vincent, Student Representative.
Amanda Kucher, Business Manager.
Scott Anier, Assistant Superintendent.
Thank you, everyone. And Dan Poisson and Connor Dufour were not able to attend this evening. I'm going to start with the approval of our consent agenda, which includes the approval of tonight's agenda as well as the approval of the minutes of the January 8th, 2025 meeting. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Quinn, do I have a second?
Second.
Pam. All those in favor? Motion carries. Do I have anyone here tonight for public participation? All right, seeing none, we are going to move on to our presentation this evening, the state of the schools. Dr. Doris.
Thank you very much, Chairperson Albert. Tonight we are pleased to present our State of the Schools report. This is the fourth year that we've presented this report to you, and I'm going to review with you what is in the report. So tonight you'll be hearing from all of our principals from the elementary, middle, and high schools, as well as Franklin Alternative. And at the end of the report, I'll also give an overview for the district. And you'll be hearing information about our parent-teacher conference participation rates, student demographics, student achievement, subgroup achievement, and the bright spots that we want to highlight for you. And in order for you to understand everything along the way, I'm going to go over some acronyms with you and some definitions. You'll be seeing the acronym NWEA. This stands for Northwest Evaluation Association, and this is our district assessment. This assessment is adaptive, and it measures student achievement and growth. It's nationally normed, and we administer this in the fall and the spring. And this is also part of the Maine Educational Assessment, but it is also separate from the Maine Educational Assessment. So what we're reporting out to you tonight is the results of our fall 2024 assessment. And you'll also see the acronym STAR in some of the graphs. This is a district level assessment that we've used previously in reading and math, and we used that in 2020 and 2021. So moving along to some of our definitions. Chronically absent, you're going to see a graph where we're showing you our rates of absenteeism, and it's the rate of chronic absenteeism. This means that a student is missing 10% or more of enrolled school days, and it could be for any reason. So it could be due to illness, it could be unexcused absence, but this is the way that the state measures our absence rates right now. And then we have economically disadvantaged, and this is abbreviated in this report, ECDIS. So this stands for students who are eligible for free or reduced lunch. And we don't want to mix this up with poverty. That's not the same thing. That's not the same definition. And then special education students, this is one of the subgroups. These are students who participate in special education programming, and they have what's called an individual education plan, or an IEP. And then we have multilingual learners. This is another one of our subgroups. This is a term that has changed over time. It used to be ELL, English Language Learners, and now it's MLL, and these are students who receive services for limited English proficiency. And then the minority subgroup, these are students who are Black, Hispanic, Asian, American Indian, Alaskan, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander, or two or more races. So a minority subgroup are all the students that are not categorized as white. And then when we get to the graduation rate, we're talking about the number of students who graduate in 4 years with a high school diploma. Any questions before we move into the presentation? Okay, I'd like to welcome up Mr. Mike Davis, principal of Sherwood Heights.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to share with you a snapshot of some data points of Sherwood Heights this evening. And I would like to start off by celebrating our fall parent-teacher conference rate at 94%. That's an excellent turnout. We do strive for 100. I believe there actually may be a few more percentages in there because we count things like phone calls, Zoom calls, in person, and things like that. But that's our best guesstimate at this point, but 94% is pretty respectable performance on conference rate. If you take a look over at the economically disadvantaged and attendance box, you will notice that we are at our highest point in the last 5 years for our academically disadvantaged students. We are at 73%, where we've typically been in the mid-60s. So this is a pretty high here for us economically. And we also want to celebrate that our chronically absenteeism is down significantly. The last 2 years has been a really big focus on being in school. And so to be at 15%, we're celebrating that, and we hope that we can continue to reduce that as we go throughout the year. Our fall data, we are for reading right around 81% and math at 80% proficiency of our students on the fall assessment. So again, that's right about where we were for the last, it's a 3-year thing, so we're holding steady there. And if we dive a little deeper into our subgroups, you will notice that with 81% proficiency rate in our reading, 80% of our economically disadvantaged students are proficient. So they're performing, which is great. We do have some work to do within our special education department and to see what we can do to tighten that up, as we have 65% of those students are proficient for our reading, as opposed to 62% of special ed population proficient on the math NWEA. But again, our economically disadvantaged students are performing well at 79%. So given that our school average is 80. And some bright spots for Sherwood Heights. Family engagement and involvement has been a focus for the last couple of years and is on the rise this year, with lots of families attending community meetings, evening events, and volunteer opportunities in school. And student success is on the rise, as you can see, with a direct correlation with our consistent implementation of the My View, My Perspective, and the illustrative math programs. And we also have very active intervention teams for academics, behavior, and attendance, and their fruits of the labor are paying off as we're seeing some good shifts in all of those categories. And that's Sherwood Heights.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Davis before we move on?
Thank you for that presentation. My question is just on the first graph under the fall district assessment, just reading and math, not broken into subgroups. It looks like the last 3 years, as you mentioned, it's been relatively flat. Obviously, the trend line suggests that, you know, it could keep going up. I guess my question is it realistic to trust the trend line, or is the fact that you've been flat the last 3 years indicative of, you know, I guess, what are the goals moving forward?
Yeah, and that's a good question, and it's one of the things we revisit every fall after we take the assessment, is to look at the different student population. We have a pretty mobile population, so we have lots of ins and outs, and so that isn't really, that's in the mix here. So certainly something our intervention teams are looking at. You'll notice that previous 2021, it was much lower. The STAR was a different assessment, and so we are continue to focus our efforts on our interventions for sure. Thank you.
The past 3 years, though, it's been the NWEA, right? Not
Correct.
the STAR.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And next up is Michelle Gagne from East Auburn.
Thank you all. I mean, it is no secret that I love East Auburn Community Schools, so I'm always very proud to be here to tote all things wonderful about East Auburn. As you can see, our fall parent-teacher conference turnout this year was at 95%, which is much better than what we experienced a couple years ago returning from COVID. So we are right back on track. Of course, our goal, like Mr. Davis said, is to reach 100% of our parents, but we are closing in very tightly on that, and we are continuing that conversation with parents regularly, not just at parent-teacher conference. So we're super proud of that work as well. As you span over to look at our attendance in economically disadvantaged populations, you can see that for a while there, East Auburn was on the rise, unfortunately, experiencing more chronically absent students and an upward trend for a while in our economically disadvantaged population as well. But in this past year, we have seen that decline in both areas, and we're very happy about that work. I will attribute that to the amazing work of our staff, especially those who really are taking care of the social and emotional needs of our students at Tier 1, and also many layers that we have on top of that, including the fine work of Danielle McCamish now, our new guidance counselor at our school, our Spur Wing counselor, and we also layer that up with some wonderful educational technicians who are taking some specific needs of students in mind every single day to make sure that our students want to be at school. Our focus last year was turn our vision from the "we are here to learn" to the "we are here to learn." And our kids know, we always say, you can't learn if you're not here. So a continued focus on being at school to be able to access education. If you look at our NWE scores over the last few years, you can see that for a while there we were trending upwards, and right now we saw a small decline this fall. So our work has been in the last month or so, every single staff meeting, we are dissecting each subgroup to look at how we are meeting their needs across their social emotional needs, economic needs, how we're checking and adjusting, and really have taken care of all students with 504 plans, students that have a specific check in, check out with the guidance counselor, or really looking at all of those specific kids and drilling down at the kid level, not just beyond the data level, but really kid by kid. And now we will layer that with our NWEA winter scores, which we're doing right now with all of our kids who we have concerns about. And we will culminate that work on February 5th with a data dive and really look deeply into that as well and check and adjust. And then if you look at our subgroups and think about NWEAs, I'd like to highlight that our economically disadvantaged students have been closing in on our overall proficiency. So that's really great to see. And also we will continue to work hard to meet the needs of our special education students as well. And that's the work that we're doing right now. And I want to just tell you about some bright spots. We are continuing to focus on strong Tier 1 instruction. We've had some great professional development recently through our math coaching and visiting authors, and we're really proud of that work. We are collaborating across all levels to continue to meet the social and emotional needs of students, and our attendance is increasing and behavioral incidents are decreasing. And we have ongoing student engagement through celebrations and opportunity for student leadership, advocacy, and involvement. And that has been really exciting for our students as well.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Mrs. Gagne?
Thank you. Always nice to be here. I'd like to introduce Stephanie Maris, who's going to tell you all the fine things that are happening at Park Avenue. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. It's always my pleasure to sit down and share with you all of the wonderful things that are happening at Park Avenue School with our students and our staff. We've had a great start to the school year. We have really strong routines and procedures in place, and our teachers are working really hard with our kids. Our kids are excelling. Currently, right now, it's a very busy season at Park Avenue as our MLL students are all completing their access testing, so we are all supporting them right now, too. So at Park Avenue this year, we started off the fall with parent-teacher conferences with strong participation, with 89% of our families coming in the building or meeting with parents over the phone to celebrate student progress. We're certainly at 100% of contact with our families at this point through IEP meetings or teachers being creative about finding ways to connect with families that couldn't make it work during the conference season. Our fall assessment data, as you can see, has been on an upward trend. We started this fall with a slight dip from last year. And as everybody else has shared, we're digging into that data to look at how we're supporting all of the students below the numbers. So not just looking at what the numbers tell us, but looking at the students that are represented in each of those performance areas and thinking about what we are doing to help meet students where they're at. At Tier 1, which is in the general classroom setting, in whole group instruction, or at Tier 1 small group instruction with their classroom teacher, Tier 2 with interventionists, our amazing MLL team, or in Tier 3 support with our special ed staff. I also want to note when you're looking at data for Park Avenue that in our assessments, because we do have the large MLL population for the district, any student who has been in the country for less than 1 year is not required to take the reading assessment. So when you look at the data for reading and math, you're looking at two different groups of students. Students who have been in the country for less than a year do not take the reading assessment. They are required to take the math assessment. So even if they arrived 1 week ago, when they enroll in school and they show up, they are taking that math assessment. And that is just part of who we are and what we do, but I do want you to notice that when you're looking at those numbers. In our overall achievement data, very consistent and strong for literacy and math and for our subgroup population. Our special ed students are performing strong, as are our MLL students in reading. In math, as we would expect based on the information I just shared with you, our MLL students perform lower in math because there are a different group of students taking that test who typically are level 1 speakers who have little to no English and are still sitting to take the assessment. Our chronic absenteeism rate for our students is something we continue to work hard on. We're making phone calls every day for any student who is absent to make connections with parents and to get kids in the building and working on making those strong relationships with our families so they feel part of the team with us, and that's what's getting kids to come in our doors. We do have a high population of socioeconomic challenged students, and they're still excelling in their academics and their growth and achievement at our school. Any questions on any of that?
It's probably for all of you, not just you, but is illness making an impact on attendance this winter?
Certainly. It's funny you asked. My school was hit by the plague last week. I'm still healthy. Absolutely. And we want our kids to come to school and be there, but we also want them to stay home when they're not well. So I will give a shout out to our school nurse, Casey Smith, who excels at communicating with families about illnesses when they're present. She's right on top of it when she notices a trend ticking up. We send home communication to our families to let them know about what's going on, how they can be proactive, what they can do to keep kids healthy. So we're on top of that too. But yeah, in case you're wondering, the stomach flu has definitely hit elementary schools. I know that was true at Fairview. We were sharing a sub-nurse with them and all of the other illnesses that go around. So yes, but with that being said, we're also helping communicate to our families that we want them at school. So there's been that turnaround piece too.
Stay well.
Thank you.
One quick question about, before we move on to the next slide, I probably asked you this last year, but what exactly is the reasoning, if you even know, between why MLL kids are required to take the math test? I mean, I can understand why they wouldn't take the reading test, but why wouldn't they also not take the math test? Because there's also reading comprehension involved.
I think the government reason for that, who makes the rule for that test, would be that numbers are numbers. However, the NWEA test is very heavy in language and sharing information for students to still access. I don't get to make the rules. They would be different if I did.
Okay, moving on to the bright spots.
Always lots of bright spots for Park Avenue. We continue to increase our parent and family engagement and support. We have a lot of parents coming into our school now who are feeling confident and coming in to sit and read with students or to be volunteers in the classroom, helping during school-wide events and things like that. Our PTO has lots of representation from families that we use translation to speak with while they're sitting in the meeting, and they're making connections too. And that's been something we've worked really hard on to break down those walls so our families feel a part of our school and feel welcome in our classrooms. So this is the first year we've had like parent readers in the hallway, and that's really exciting for us too. We continue to maintain strong growth and achievement results in literacy and math for all of our students. Our MLL model is that our students are in the general classroom setting, and we do a push-in model where our MLL teachers or ed tech support staff will go into the classroom to do co-teaching of lessons, in addition to doing pull-out support to give that targeted need support for different groups of students. Our special ed teachers do the same, so our students are surrounded by all the layers of support they need to continue to grow and achieve in the classroom setting. A huge celebration for our population is that last spring, on the access testing for the 23-24 school year, 70% of our students made adequate growth and achievement on their access test. It means that they were able to grow on their achievement score on the access test by the anticipated benchmark. Access is a test that measures their skills of English in reading, listening, speaking, and writing. And they score anywhere from a 1 to a 6, and they have to be just over a 4 to exit from services. Last year, we exited 10 students at Park Avenue from MLL services. That was a big celebration at one of our end-of-the-year school assemblies. So that is a huge accomplishment for our students, but also kudos to our staff for all of the work they do together, collaborating to meet the needs of our students and help them reach those goals.
Thank you, Mrs. Mears. Any further questions?
I'm curious, do you know what percentage Park Ave is for ML students?
We're just under 40%. It's usually runs between 30 and 40% for our MLL population. Mm-hmm. Any other questions? All right, then it's my pleasure to introduce and bring up Mrs. Bodette for Fairview School.
Good evening. I appreciate the opportunity to talk a little bit about Fairview School. I'll start with our parent-teacher conference participation. We had about 92% of our population attend parent conferences, but we do work consistently to connect with parents through Remind, email, phone calls, support group meetings, IEPs, and then individual conferences throughout the year. So kudos to the teachers for that. When we look over at the chronically absenteeism rate, we have dropped slightly to 14%. And I will say we do have some procedures in place, and I do have to give a shout out to my school counselor, Corey Filetra, who is working with 493 students, and she monitors that closely, working with the teachers, working with myself, and making phone calls and creating plans as needed. So that's much appreciated. Our economically disadvantaged numbers have dropped to slightly at 38%. And then when we look at the achievement, we have dropped slightly, but we are at 91% for both reading and math. Then when you compare our subgroups, if you look at reading, our economically disadvantaged students are 88%, so they're right there, keeping up. And our special education subgroup is at 82%, which is a really strong number. When you look at math, our economically disadvantaged students are keeping up, they're at the same rate at 91%, and then our special education subgroup is at 71%. There are lots of positive things to celebrate, like every other school, and I do have to give a shout out to my staff because they are, truly dedicated and do whatever it takes to meet all the needs of our students. So none of this would be possible without them. But we did highlight that we are continuing to provide rigorous instruction in math and literacy for all students. And I think that you saw that in our subgroup data. We are working to increase interventions for students in need using targeted Tier 1 classroom interventions in small groups and then pull-out interventions. So we don't receive additional supports at Fairview School, so we've worked really hard to make that the most, to get the biggest bang for our buck for what we have. And again, a big shout out to Carol Chelani, our literacy coach, for helping in that realm. We are continuing to engage and support all staff in collaboration and professional growth. And as an Apple Distinguished School, in March, Fairview will be hosting our first site visit to demonstrate the impacts of technology in the elementary classroom. So we'll have, we're working closely, and honestly, I have to give a shout out to Mackenzie Godwin, because this is kind of her baby. So she works closely with an Apple rep, and we should have approximately 20 teachers or staff from other schools in Maine visiting our classrooms. And so that will be exciting. They'll get to talk to our teachers and then some students about the impacts and the use of technology in the classroom.
Thank you. Any questions for Mrs. Bodette?
Great. I am happy to introduce the Walton Administrator, Amy Heimerl.
I don't think you have
Oh,
to-
am I not on?
Yeah.
Oh, there we go. I don't. Sure. I did before. All right. Well, thank you so much for having us here tonight. I'm very proud to be able to share a little bit about Walton School and the success we've had thus far this year. We began the fall with our parent-teacher conference participation at about 88%. Again, as has been stated this evening, we continue to meet with parents regularly and follow up IEP meetings, CSTs, all the different ways that we're connecting daily. So that is 1%, but that is an ongoing percent that we work very hard to connect with those families. If we think about our attendance and economically disadvantaged groups of students, we have a 72% economically disadvantaged rate in our Walton population right now, which is down slightly from last year, but fairly consistent across the several years that you see there. Our chronic absenteeism is up a bit this year from last year, but if you look again across, we are down from some of the previous years as well. Illness has been something we've been battling pretty significantly this year, so some of that is attributed to all the things. At the bottom, our fall district assessment data, you'll see that we definitely have continued an upward trend over the past 3 years with our NWEA. So this year, our reading scores, we were at 88% proficiency and 81% for math, which is up in both areas from last year and continuing so. When we think about our subgroups within both the reading and the math, our economically disadvantaged students are keeping pace with or exceeding our overall percentages, which is lovely to see. Our special ed reading 65% and math 46%, both down some from there. We do have some work that we're putting into place to help build those scores and help those students achieve as well. So that takes care of the data portion.
Any questions for Mrs. Heimerl?
All right. And just a few of our bright spots. There's always lots that we can talk about, but a few things to highlight is that our literacy and math scores are continuing to improve as a result of our consistent implementation of our math and literacy programs. Through professional development sessions and collaboration this year, our staff is continuing to grow in their knowledge and understanding about best practices to ensure that our students are growing and succeeding in math and literacy. And through family events, learning celebrations, school-wide newsletters and communications, positive supports for students. We are helping to increase our family and community engagement so that we can succeed in all that we do. So,
Thank you. Any questions before we move on?
all right, it's my pleasure to introduce Megan Wood, principal at Washburn.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here and to speak to the hard work we've been doing over at Washburn this year. So as you'll notice, similarly, our parent-teacher conference participation, right around 88%. As my colleagues have said, that's an ongoing effort of collaboration. This is just one data point from conferences, but we are constantly in communication with families, whether it be phone calls, using Remind, emails, in person. It's definitely an effort that we've been putting forth this year, is to increase that family engagement. So as you'll notice in the top right-hand corner, with attendance and economically disadvantaged, our chronic absenteeism is a bit up this year. We were on a kind of downward trend. What I've noticed right now, due to illness, as well as, how the attendance is based on the percentile of days missed. So we have some kiddos who are coming up, but we're hoping to even that out throughout the rest of the year as time does go on. And a huge shout out to my school counselor, Maggie Luce. She's phenomenal at connecting with families and reaching out and bridging those communication gaps to ensure kiddos are at school. As you'll notice, the economically disadvantaged is up a bit from last year. However, it's well within the range that we have been over the past 5 years. And that being said, looking at our district assessments, similarly, as Mr. Davis noted, we've kind of stagnated a little bit at Washburn as well. However, we are continuing to reflect on that and look at our interventions as well as Tier 1 instruction to ensure students are making gains academically. When we look at our subgroups as well, we can notice that there's a slight difference between special education and our economically disadvantaged, as well as the overall percentiles. So still right around the same percentile-wise as we were last year. However, looking at how are we supporting those kiddos and subgroups to make sure we're closing those gaps. It's an ongoing reflection and process. Some bright spots from Washburn, just to name a few. Our attendance rate for the current school year is above 93%, and as I stated before, a lot of that has to go to Maggie Luce for her hard work in connecting with families and ensuring students are at school. And our major office referrals have decreased substantially. We're down 18% compared to this time last year. And a lot of that has to go towards working with Jennifer Butterworth, as she is a huge resource for us at Washburn to ensure we're meeting students' needs through a behavior lens. Participation in Winter Kids is bringing strong pride in our community and positive energy to Washburn. We just got the leaderboard. We are in 3rd right now, but there are a lot of people tied for 7th. So it's just bringing a lot of cheer and fun and enthusiasm to our school right now. And we have strengthened our intervention system this year to ensure support is available for all students. That's been a big effort, is to really strengthen our Tier 3 interventions for students. So,
Thank you. Any questions?
I just have a couple questions.
Sure.
One is, what is a major office referral?
So a major office referral, Oh, that's a great question. Is kind of we have major and minor. So minor would be a teacher classroom managed behavior, such as perhaps a disrespectful comment or something that a classroom teacher could easily manage. Whereas a major is more, it could be something physical or threatening of nature.
The other question, actually, it's for all the schools. The math and reading percentages, they're great. They're above average, which I say kudos to all the staff that are doing the work and the students. But I'm just wondering if, and I'm sure this is happening, but I just kind of want to put that out there. Sure. Is there a collaboration with admin as far as like the schools that are getting 91%? What are they doing that is letting that is attaining that? Is there a collaboration between all of you, all of the schools, so that we can try to get all the schools at that level?
Yeah, I mean, no, absolutely. No, that's okay. So I would say definitely we are always in communication and talking about what's working and what's not working. And I would say we also look towards our curriculum coaches, Carol Chelani, Lisa Coburn, and Kim Joler. We rely on them a lot to kind of look at each building individually and say, okay, what are our next steps? So what those next steps might be for Washburn might not necessarily be for Walton and that kind of thing. So we are absolutely always reflecting and looking at that and having those conversations. Yeah, thank you.
This is just a general thing also for the curriculum subcommittee. I'd really like to do some more diving into like the special ed to try to see how we can support them. And so those that are on the curriculum committee with me, let's work on that.
I just have one question about how is attendance rate measured? And I'm just curious about the relation to the chronically absent students, because if you have 26% of students who are considered chronically absent so far this year, I'm just curious how that relates to the 93% attendance rate and how the attendance rate is measured.
Sorry, in my head I'm like thinking. So the attendance rate is measured through the daily average of students in attendance throughout the year. The chronic absenteeism is the measurement of 10% of the school, the enrolled school days being missed. So, for example, if a student is missing 2 weeks in the fall for a vacation, they're going to come up as chronically absent right now, whereas by the end of the year, they might not reach that threshold anymore.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Could you tell me a little bit more about Winter Kids?
Yeah.
What that is?
Sure. So we are partnering, Healthy Androscoggin is collaborating with us to help us work with Winter Kids. So it's a statewide competition. There are 16 schools involved, and there's a rubric each week that involves family engagement, participation from students in the activities for the day. So it's essentially a daily activity, and this year's theme is around weather. So each day our students are going out and kind of putting their meteorologist hats on, and they get to do an observation of the weather and report that out. We also are doing activities such as today, our kindergarten through second graders, they did an activity where they had a chunk of ice and they used droppers with salt added to it to watch it melt. And so they really get to get this hands-on experience while also learning about science and staying active in winter. That's the real goal. So there is a financial gain if we win, but even if we don't win, the kids are having a lot of fun, and it's definitely bringing smiles to people's faces. So
Good, and it sounds like a fun time.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing.
Thank you. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. And now I'd like to welcome Mr. Ben Wilson from the middle school.
Thank you. We continue with our strong educational practices at AMS, and we're pretty proud to show you what we've been doing. So first thing I want to point out is that we've had 92% participation with our parent-teacher conferences, whether in person or over the phone. We make sure every family gets a reach out. And it's been fantastic continuing making those connections with our community. Our fall data is taking this minor dip in reading, and yet our math is holding its own, which is pretty fantastic. We are working on developing a climate of literacy at the middle school, and this is probably the first time in a while that's been something that we've concentrated on. Last year, we read 125,000 pages as a school. This year, right now, we're at 275,000 pages, so we're really trying to make it important. Looking at our chronically absent, I love how Ms. Wood mentioned the 10 days. So we have a lot of parents who still are concerned about the viruses and illnesses that children have, and they can keep them out for 5 days at a time. Any student who has 10 days or more is considered chronically absent. We have done phenomenal work with our truancy this year, but I think what happens now is instead of parents keeping kids home and not telling us, they call us and tell us. So that's why they're now going to be chronically absent, because we now get notified when they are absent. So that's kind of a good thing to see because we know where they are. Looking at our economically disadvantaged, we had a phenomenal job this year getting our our free reduced lunch forms back. We're well over 90% with that this year, which was fantastic. And because of that, I think the data is holding pretty true. I think we are roughly in the 60th percentile for economically disadvantaged in our community, which is great. Our fall district assessment subgroups, breaking them down, we're doing a great job overall. We're holding our own when they're economically disadvantaged. And so in reviewing the breakdown of subgroups, we are doing well by holding steady. But we have done a lot of work in mitigating what we are seeing in our MLL population and our special ed population. So you're going to notice those numbers look pretty meager. We did have a lot of students last year who were new to the country, so again, didn't take the reading test, but took the math test. And again, the math NOEA assessment does have a lot of literacy pieces to it, so it's awful complicated. And our numbers jumped last year. I think we started the year with 20 MLL students. We ended the year with over 40. So that was last year was a growth year. So any questions so far? Yes, Pat.
Sorry, go ahead. The economically disadvantaged numbers.
Yes.
Where you have students from the whole town, the whole community of Auburn, as opposed to the elementary that
Yeah.
That's pretty reflective of our whole town.
It's the first time that data
right?
comes together. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
That may be one of our strongest data points that we've had in a long time, because historically, the middle school through high school tends to get underreported, and just as you said, that's just the one stop, so it's not trying to compare across 6 elementaries, and Ben did a terrific job at getting those forms back, probably one of the best efforts that we've had historically.
We were really
long
close to
time.
100%, but I don't want to brag.
I was bragging.
Thank you, Scott.
That's good information.
I do think it's really unfortunate to these students who are immigrant students that come in and have to take this math test when there's so much literature in the math test. I think it's setting them up for failure. I know it's not our fault, and it's the government or federal reason for doing that. I just think it's really unfortunate. But I do want to commend you on the lunch, the free lunch, and doing that, because I know that sitting in this chair for the years that I've been doing it, I know that one of the issues is as kids get older, there's a stigma to getting the free lunch and filling out the form. So I do want to say kudos to you for helping to either to bridge that or to eliminate that, because there should not be a stigma to that, but there is. So I just want to say kudos to you for doing that.
I have to give kudos to Donna. So between Donna and Lori and I, we called each and every parent who had not turned in a slip. So we had a verbal response, if not something physical on paper. And as a district, it's vital to get that information. And since this is the first time the community comes together as a school, it's useful and it's vital for us.
I have one question
Sure, no
about,
worries.
So just looking at the significant drop in the assessment for reading for the MLL population between 2023 and 2024, I'm just curious what the supports are that are going to be put in place in order to address that.
I am so glad you asked. If you go to the bright spots, I have it in the bright spots. We've done our due diligence here. So bright spots, we're continuing to provide rigorous instruction in math and literacy for all students. We implemented Math and Read 180, supporting our growth of our special education students. So we're working diligently with our curriculum to see if we can't make major increases with our special ed population. Likewise, I'll skip to MLL. We've developed and implemented a new MLL program this year. It's designed to support a diverse student population. We actually have a master's level MLL educator in our program now with many years of literacy experience, and we're very excited to have her. She's been doing boost groups. She's been doing breakout sessions. The kids are phenomenally engaged this year. They're being pushed out for social studies and for science, so they're getting the full encompass of literacy instruction, not just in the classroom, but also having to develop their language skills in the social studies and science curriculum areas. But we're doing, I think, a bang-up job this year with that. We started the year with probably most of our students. So we're going to get a good amount of growth out of them. We just completed our access test. I'm really excited to see in March what those scores are going to be. But it's a major improvement over the years past. I'll just say that. We continue to partner with Bates for our Aspirations program. This year, we're up to 36 students who come, and they help us with our Tier 2 program for social emotional supports, which has been fantastic for us. We partner with the Maine National Guard for a Keeping It Real program. This supports students with making positive life choices in the areas of drug and alcohol use, and we're finding a big boon with that. And we have continued improvement in our reportable behaviors. Major referrals are down 29% compared to this time last year, and reportable safety incidences are down 22% from this time last year. Someone asked earlier what a major would be, and I look at it as there's a minor disruption to the educational process, and there's a major disruption to the educational process, and they get handled differently. A teacher may be able to just squelch, whether it's the teacher eyeball or maybe a hand up, a minor behavior, where a major behavior may need some processing time. And that sometimes includes the office. And safety incidents to me are things like there's been a physical altercation or something else has happened. So.
Thank you. Any further questions?
Yeah. Do you only have one MLL teacher at the middle school?
We have one very dynamic and highly educated ML teacher, and we have 2 ed techs supporting her. And so again, we have small group work going on in the ML classroom, which is best practice. And then the ed techs help push out with those students in the social studies and the science area. And there's literacy abound. So they're reading in social studies, they're reading in science, and they're reading in the ML classroom. So.
Great. And do you know what that new program is that they are using?
Oh, it's not a book. It is we at the middle school have not had, I can say this honestly, this is the first year I think we've had an organized approach to teaching MLL. Our instructor came in with the idea of creating plans like you would for an IEP or for 504. So each student has an individualized plan, and they've been working diligently. And we're using data differently this year at the middle school. So we're very much taking the data approach to seeing growth. And we've been tracking the data week by week, through, Alexi Viscardi's doing a phenomenal job with this. She's been collecting data week by week, and we're seeing growth every week, which is fantastic. Melissa can nod her head over here behind me here, but it really has been a change. The change of program has been the change in the organization and the instructional approach, and we're seeing a lot of positive improvement because of that. This data will not look like this next year. I can guarantee that. So,
thank you so much.
Yeah.
Question. What are the numbers of your MLL students? How many do you have?
Right now, after this week, we have 43 students currently, which is just under 10% of the population.
Thank you.
Good. All right. I'd like to introduce Mrs. McLeod, Franklin. McLeod.
It's on, yes. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to come and talk a little bit about the Franklin School. As you will see, fairly consistent NWEA scores with a little bit of a bump in math, which I think has been reflective of some of the work we've been doing on aligning our math curriculum a little bit more. As I've explained to folks in the past, data at Franklin can be tricky. The group that we're comparing this year's 2024 NWEAs against from last year, it's almost an entirely different group of students because of the way we do enrollments and a lot of transitions amongst our students. So I always try to take that in mind when I'm thinking about our data points. Moving on to the attendance data, again, consistently as far as the chronic absenteeism, and again, oftentimes a referral to the Franklin program is a truancy intervention. So a lot of the students who come and join us, one of the reasons they've been referred is because they're not attending school. And so the hope is always that a change of environment is going to encourage students to attend more regularly. We generally see that trend. And then, you know, unfortunately, same old song about the economic disadvantaged data. Anecdotally and on the ground, I can tell you that that number is not reflective of our actual students' financial situation. In fact, if anything, I have seen a pretty significant increase in unaccompanied students, students living on their own or doubled up over the past couple of years, which would definitely qualify them in that category. I can move on to the next slide. I don't know who's, oh, there we go. Again, our graduation rate still up in the 90s. Again, for a little context, 91% last year was 2 of our students did not complete their graduation requirements before the end of that year. Again, enrollment stays pretty consistent. It says 75 right now. I just enrolled 4 students this week, so you can see how quickly those numbers can change. Our Lewiston students, at the time of this data, we had 15 tuition students from Lewiston enrolled. Again, 3 out of those students I just enrolled are coming from Lewiston, so that bumps our number up. And we'll move on to bright spots. So, as you guys know, we're running some really innovative and different programming at Franklin this year as a result of a grant that we secured last year. At this point, so 1 semester into that programming, 60% of our students have been engaged in 1 or more of those new initiatives. They include our wilderness education program, our trauma-informed yoga program, and some of the Spark or the aerobics for academics program. One of the ways that we've been able to implement those programs so effectively is that we've really increased our partnerships with Bates. Prior to the pandemic, I felt like we had a lot of collaboration with certain centers within Bates, and that kind of went away with the pandemic, and I feel like we're getting getting up to a higher level. The entire community-based research seminar for junior psychology students worked with the Franklin School. So all of their poster presentations were focused on data around how the implementation of those programs have been affecting student outcomes. And I currently have 2 senior thesis students who their focus will be on Franklin in one way or another. I have a student who's researching trauma-informed education practices, and then another young man who is looking at academics and aerobic activity. So perfectly aligned with our programming. And lastly, one of our main goals, I want every student leaving our program with something in the future for them. So we continue to focus on those career and college readiness programs. Our welding program is going strong. We've now completed our 2nd year of offering an employment boot camp through vocational rehab, which is really well received by our students. I think we doubled our enrollment this year from last year. So again, lots of things happening, lots of growth, and some of you may ask in regard to our therapy dog. She is now training on site 1 day a week. So we're getting much closer to certification. I've been training myself every weekend since October. So that's been exciting. She was just with us today. She's been very well received, and it's been a really little ray of sunshine for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions?
I just love what you're doing at Franklin. I mean, everybody, but Franklin, I don't know, there's just something about Franklin that tugs at my heartstrings, because I know that a lot of these kids may not have the opportunity, but you give them this opportunity, and I just think it's great. I think this program, this grant that you got last year, and we spoke about it, I think it's a great it's a great tool, and I don't know. I'm just thank you for all that you do, because I think a lot of these kids wouldn't have the opportunity, and I just really appreciate that we have this in our community. I'm very much not a black and white person. I'm very much a gray person. So I think that having this opportunity for these kids is it just means a lot, and I'm just grateful that we have this in our community. So thank you.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. I always say we have some of the best Auburn students at Franklin. They're just waiting for that chance to prove who they are. So.
Thank you.
Okay, without further ado, I'll introduce Mrs. Ackley from Edward Little.
Good evening, everyone. I'm very happy to be here to report out on Edward Little, and I'm in a very unique situation, being 8 weeks into the new job and having to give the State of Schools report. But I look at it as he told me earlier, I'll be a foot and a half away. And this really celebrates his leadership and his direction of Edward Little, and I just get to be the one to report out on it. So let's get started. With parent-teacher conference night, we were at about 85%. And to give you an idea of what that number means for Edward Little teachers can hold 20 slots for parent-teacher conference on that Wednesday night in November. For instance, Mr. Bressler, one of our social studies teachers, has 129 students. So to only be able to meet with 20 parents on that night requires him to really have the opportunity to reach out to parents and to connect with phone calls, emails, Zoom opportunities, maybe not on that night, on another night. So this really represents, 20 slots represents 16 to 33% of a teacher load, and the fact that we could get to 85 with other means of communication is a big feat for us. In terms of our fall district assessment data in grades 9 and 10, we had about 190 ninth graders, 221 10th graders take the NUIA in the fall. We did see a dip in terms of our overall achievement with English and math. And then our subgroups pretty much stayed stable from last year to this year, but our response to that was taking a look at specifically reading and seeing an 11% dip. We were pretty responsive right away in the fall, and we looked at decreasing class sizes, specifically in our guided English 9th grade courses, and adding a section to be able to appropriately place students in terms of analyzing that data and their previous data. We have some co-teaching classes that we're doing with MLL, where Alice Crawford, one of our MLL teachers, is co-teaching with some of our regular ed teachers, and we're supporting students in terms of their math development as well as their language development. We're piloting special ed Read 180, Math 180, as Ben alluded to. We're doing the same, and we've got a new case management system for MLL to be able to support those students. So we've been pretty responsive in trying to decrease class sizes, individualize programming for students, and hopefully we'll see an increase in those numbers next year. Subgroups has really been a point of focus for us. We've got enrollments up in all of our subgroup areas. And NUIA is one data point, and I'm itching to get to the next few slides because you're going to see some really positive data in other ways. And so with that, just real quick, our attendance and economically disadvantaged. We've done some work with attendance, and you've seen a small improvement in terms of the number of chronically absent students. We've created monthly meetings where admin, guidance, and social workers partner to discuss students and to see how we can get students to school. We've worked with Peter to set up and use technology to our advantage, where we have 2 robocalls going out to families when students are absent based on homeroom first period and then at the end of the day. So we're trying to connect more with families so they understand when students aren't in class, and really having guidance play point for students to be able to improve attendance and minimize truancy. So on the next slide, this is where we get into some really phenomenal data, and you can see some major improvements that we've had in terms of our programming. First, we're going to start with AP course enrollments. You can see based overall, we've got a 7% increase in terms of overall enrollment, and you can see that we have increased participation across our 3 subgroups. This represents 10 AP classes, as well as 1 exam-only class, because we have an honors class that students are able to access an AP class for. And so that's our number of classes. We have 152 students this year taking 247 AP exams. It's the highest we've ever had. That's an increase from 107 students taking 186 exams last year. And this year, I'm happy to report that we have 29 AP scholars. Again, that's the highest we've seen. We have 8 with distinction, 6 with honors, and 15 scholars, and that's based on the average AP score they've seen over 3 or more exams, 4 or more, 5 or more, as you build up from scholar to distinguished. And so we're super happy with the achievements we've seen across the AP courses. In terms of dual enrollment, these are courses that we offer at Edward Little, where we also have a partnership with a post-secondary institution. There are 22 classes at Edward Little that are considered dual enrollment. And again, you can see we've got increased participation. Overall, our minority and our economically disadvantaged has a huge jump in terms of dual enrollment college classes. We have 159 students involved this year compared to 111 from last year.
What are you doing to increase these numbers? Are you making it more known, or I'm just like, this seems like a big jump for me?
It is a really big jump. Over the last couple of years, through our work in our data meetings that are 4 times throughout the year, we've worked with Dr. Doris and Dr. Brown to look specifically, and Dr. Brown charged us with trying to get these numbers up and really looking at kid by kid and looking at the learning pathways that students have. We've worked with guidance to be able to, speak very intentionally with students about opportunities that we have, and teachers through their day-to-day with students in courses and building those aspirations in students, as well as around course registration time, really having guidance and the teachers talk to kids specifically about the classes we offer.
The one-on-one interactions that guidance and other adults in the building have to promote those kids, to let them know that those opportunities exist, and it's not based on did you have a 90 in that class, but it's open enrollment. You can do this. We spend a lot of time looking at how to bridge certain gaps. We also invested a lot of time at the enrollment period and really just promoting it and, word of mouth, but also just very intentional conversations with kids to say, there's no ceiling for you. You can be enrolled in those classes. And that is, just a student hearing from another adult, that someone in the building that they trust in some manner, to be able to tell them that goes a long, long way for them.
I will say too, I think some of that also has come out of these same discussions at this same presentation the last couple of years, in seeing the discrepancy between, kind of the overall enrollment numbers for some of these AP and dual enrollment classes, but then the discrepancy with our minority and our economically disadvantaged populations. It was something that the school committee also felt very strongly about, trying to increase those numbers and making more of those opportunities available to more students. Anyone else?
The next slide. Yep. Here we're going to be talking about our honors courses as well as our early college classes. In terms of honors enrollment, we've seen a 6 percentage point jump, where right now we're at 386 students involved in 21 honors courses at the high school. This just includes the high school students, grades 9 through 12, but I also want to impress upon you that we're offering honors math for 13 AMS students, and that's been an initiative that we've had over the last few years. I didn't want that particular number to skew our grades 9 through 12 data, so I wanted to keep that separate. And you can see we've Improved overall in the enrollment for honors classes, small dip in the minority, but again, another big jump in the economically disadvantaged, and that's a trend you'll see across. With early college, these are classes that students can take, and they register through the EC Explore website. Students can take courses at various Maine colleges. We've got 28 different classes that 97 students are taking this year. And so we're happy to see the variety of courses they get to access, from public speaking to, say, a second level US history class to possibly more work in law enforcement because they're a part of the LRTC program. So they get some autonomy there in terms of the choices that they have.
I just really want to commend the early college program. My kid just started this and it convinced him to apply to college. So it's really transformative for some students.
It really builds that confidence and a very supportive network for students where they may not feel like they are confident enough to go to college, but with the help of guidance counselors, teachers, early college professors, and doing it in a time frame that in a support system like high school versus being alone at the post-secondary level. You've left home, you're building new friendships, you're trying to build new networks. I think it's a huge positive for students.
Oh, Pat.
Okay, Val. Olivia's taking online classes. Is that the early college enrollment that she's doing?
It is, yeah.
And it's also through LRTC?
For early college is not through LRTC. In terms of Bridge Academy, yes. So we have a small group of students that are taking what we call bridge classes. That would be in partnership with LRTC because there is an LRTC component to the Bridge program specifically. We have 6 seniors that are involved and 13 juniors that are involved in the Bridge program. So that's the piece that's involved with LRTC. But then there's other early college classes online that students can take.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. And then with aspirations, we're talking about 650 kids when we talk aspirations, because this coursework really involves LRTC. We have our own EL aspirations department. Mike Adams teaches business-based classes and some dual enrollment classes with Thomas College. We have Sarah Duchette that really focuses in on health. We have Gretchen Slover that teaches culinary, so that's kind of the EL component to that. And then we also have the Jobs for Maine Graduates program, where Erin Lewis teaches all 4 grade levels, and they're really doing a nice job at the JMG level to look at micro-credentialing for students in new curriculums, and they can build on that through the 4-year sequence, which is amazing. And he and I just sat down to talk a little bit more about what that looks like as that's building at the JMG level and then coming down to us. You can see that we've increased from 59.8 to 64.22 in terms of enrollment. We did dip with minority and IEP 504 students, but again, you'll see that big transition with the economically disadvantaged.
This aspiration programs, does that have to do with like life skills?
Work skills, life skills, you're aspiring. With LRTC, you have different programs, so you could be focusing on, I want to go into early childhood, I want to go into cosmetology, and then we have a program for that through LRTC. For EL, we're really looking at those foundational skill elements of, I'm thinking about business, so I'm going to take accounting, or I'm going to take entrepreneurship, or I'm going to take marketing to get my feet wet, to see if then I want to go into the LRTC Business Academy. So it's really trying to build aspirations and give students some thought on what they may do after high school and building that pathway for them and through their academics.
One area that's not highlighted, but I just wanted to be sure, when we're talking about AP courses, we have Mr. Eisenman who teaches a lot of our computer science classes in AP, and we just had some students who placed first in a national competition through Carnegie Mellon, who produced stuff. But to see an Edward Little kid win a national award was just absolutely phenomenal through Carnegie Mellon, and we're just really lucky to have Eric and be able to offer those types of courses for kids because those numbers fluctuate up and down semester to semester. But the kids that go through there, his numbers have increased. They are lucky to have him as their professor, truly.
And to piggyback off that, to give you an idea, traditionally we have 1 to 3 students enrolled in AP Computer Science, and this year we have 7. And that's a huge jump for us in terms of our computer science program, so we're very, very happy about that. And then we can move to the next slide, and this is a huge celebration for us in terms of our graduation rate. We continue to improve, and last year, the senior class almost made 95%. We were going for it, but we got 94.8%. This is really a testament to the teamwork of the entire staff at EL, as well as the support of the district. And I say that because it goes from support staff to classroom teachers to guidance to assistant principals to our MLL staff, our McKinney-Vento liaison, Melissa working with us with our MLL program, our JMG partnerships, our credit recovery programs through JMG and ELPM, and really we gain a lot of credits back when we get some time with students during Ice Week, February vacation, Mud Week, April vacation, and summer school. And those are all programs that you support for us from a financial perspective, and that has huge dividends for us in terms of getting up to that 94.8%. So we're extremely proud of that number, and historically the highest we've ever had, and it will be, you know, one of those top percentages in the state once we see those reports. So we're very, very excited about that number. And with that, we'll finish with some bright spots. With a school of over 1,000 students and over 150 staff, I went beyond the 3 and took 5 bright spots. So, you know, forgive me on that. So again, our graduation rate, that testament to collaboration, creative thinking, willingness to do whatever it takes from our hardworking staff, dedicated staff. Our LRTC programs are thriving, including 2 new programs at EL, Fire Science and Criminal Justice. And we had a great number of students represent us at Skills USA, and the Skills USA ceremony is tomorrow at LRTC, so we're excited to see who's headed to Skills USA. We have a new events coordinator, Lily Gardner, who is connecting with the community and facilitating the use of our new beautiful performing arts space, and I can tell you she's a go-getter. And we have a lot of people using that space. We've got Odyssey of the Mind coming in, we've got Cinderella coming in as a performance. We're going to have Maine come in to have a band concert. We have all kinds of programs. So we're working on PR to put that out to the community so people know what's happening at Edward Little. Jeremy Gatcomb and Bill Buzza have been really nice supports for Lily and I as we navigate this new pathway. We're seeing great student involvement in extracurricular and co-curricular activities. We have a high number of students involved in athletics, in band, music, chorus, all the things. We have a lot of students handing in papers for community service hours, which we like to see them out in the community. The kids are shining as athletes, musicians, artists, members of clubs, leaders of organizations, and what we're really excited about, and I just talked to Huda this morning, we're bringing back Culture Night in the spring during April, right before break, and we're also going to have an in-school component to that with an assembly as well. I charged the staff at EL for 2025 to be the year about family, having new and continued traditions, and making the new house a home now. Construction's pretty much done, and we're enjoying the quiet and not having a hum around the building. So that's Edward Little.
Thank you. Any questions?
No, not so many questions, but a comment. I've been on this board now for almost 6 years, and I know that one of the things that we tasked, one of the goals that we had as a school committee was to increase the graduation rate. And a lot of naysayers were like, that's crazy, you're never gonna get to 95%, but kudos to you because you did. And all the hard work that you've done, and I know that it doesn't start at EL, it starts in elementary all the way up, and you guys have all done a phenomenal job at, you know, making it possible and making our schools better. You know, I've been sitting on this side of the fence for a while, and I'm just really proud of all the work that you guys have done, everybody in this school system. I know I'm getting like really mushy tonight, I apologize. But no, just hearing all of this and all the great things that you guys are doing, and I'm just really proud of, being, I can't really say that I've been part of it because you guys have been doing all the work and everybody in the staff has been doing all the work, but it's just, I feel proud to be part of this community that you guys have really done a great job. So thank you.
Thank you for saying that. I know the staff, will enjoy hearing that, but I think you bring up a really good point in that it does take a community and it does take a common vision. And I think Auburn is very fortunate to have a leadership team like the one that we do. And we collaborate, whether it's elementary, middle high, elementary high, we're all collaborating. We meet, regularly, and I think that's a testament to the entire group and the entire staff of Auburn, because there's no way we could have gotten to 94.8% without everyone here.
I think it also sends a message to the whole community that we value education in Auburn. Adam.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation, Val. My question is very broad, and from my takeaways over the last year is that we've invested heavily from an effort level in communication with students and parents, and letting students know what they have available to them and what they can be capable of. And throughout the entire district, I've kind of heard that theme over and over. As we look forward to the next school year, obviously we'll keep investing in those efforts. I guess categorically speaking, where else should we be investing in to make sure that our students are succeeding?
Well, for me, in terms of the short term, we, at Edward Little specifically, I would really like to see, based on the data that you see here, the investment around MLL support and special ed support. I think that's the focus for us in the next 3 to 5 years, if I were to answer that question. And that will then continue to build our foundations because we've got so much open access. And if we can put more supports in those 2 subgroup areas, I think, we'll see better gains down the road. So for me, that would be the answer to that. I don't know if Scott has a different thought.
Sometimes Val and I talk. So that has been, like, from the beginning of the school year, a lot of energy of this is what we have for resource. How do we maximize it to the utmost? And now we're getting close to that place of these are the next areas that we really need to make a deeper dive into. What are our next steps for it between MLL and special ed? The numbers are growing on the MLL side, and the intensity of need and the overall level of resource settings that we're seeing for our special ed students really place a lot of demands on the staff levels and the resources that we do have within the building.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to move along, and we're going to just take a quick look at the district level. You've seen what's happening in all of our buildings, and I would like to thank our principals for their excellent presentations tonight. So when we take a look at the district, you're going to see some of the same trends in terms of our fall district assessment. This year, we're seeing a little dip down from last year overall, from 84% in reading to 81%, and 80% in math to 78%. And then staying with the district assessment in terms of our subgroups, you can also see the same things that we saw in the schools, where our MLL subgroup is dipping down a little bit this year in both reading and math, and our special ed subgroup as well is an area that we're always working on, those 2 subgroups. And then looking up at our attendance for our chronically absent, we are at 25% right now at this point in the year, and this is similar to where we've been in previous years, so it's maintaining, that trend is maintaining. And then economically disadvantaged, overall we're at 55%. I do think the middle school number, 61%, is probably more accurate than the 55%. And again, this has to do with getting all of our forms in, and it's a challenge to do at the high school. So without all of those forms there, I think our numbers come down, and that's why we're at 55% there. And then I want to move right along to our bright spots. You are seeing gains in literacy and math, and those have been maintained over the last 3 years. Our graduation rates continue to increase, and we are so proud of where we are right now with that graduation rate. So much work has gone into that. You're also seeing Auburn students benefiting from expanded career and technical education programming at EL, as well as grant-funded programs and community-based supports, and you heard about some of that tonight. We are very fortunate to have literacy and math coaches right now, and they are providing district-level professional development and also working with teachers in classrooms. And then I think what you've heard over and over again tonight is that we have a world-class staff here in Auburn, and they are dedicated and committed to our students. And I want to thank them tonight for everything that they do, because what you heard tonight is a result of our entire staff here in Auburn pulling together and working hard for kids. Yeah. Are there any questions?
Do you know yet how we compare with other school districts with those figures?
In terms of graduation rate, we are up in the top. You know, we can get you exactly where we stand there, but our graduation rate is, what do you think, Scott?
Oh, we're in the top 10.
Top 10, for
and
sure.
We have the highest graduation rate for a Class A school.
The student achievement, because this is a district level assessment, we can't really compare right now to everyone else, but we'll have some more information for you in the spring when we go over our state assessment results.
Jay.
Do students take the NUIA test at all in the winter or only fall and spring?
We do have some students taking the NUIA in the winter, but it's not district-wide. So it's not a marker that we would include in a presentation like this.
Thank you. And one thing I did want to mention about all of the schools, I love that we're increasing intervention supports, that it's really key to kind of push a kid to proficiency. So I was really happy to see that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? All right. Oh, thank
Yes.
you. Thank
Round
you,
of
everyone,
applause.
so much. It's always really interesting to see this data year to year, and it's just incredible some of the gains that you all have made. So thank you. Okay, so moving on. Do we have a school committee report tonight?
I just have one
School committee
quick
student
thing.
report. Yeah.
It is currently midterms or finals at Edward Little, so we have this week we have all every class is the final.
Great, thank you. Do we have a superintendent's report tonight? Dr. Doris.
Thank you, Chairperson Albert. Yes, I want to provide an update on the numbers for our students experiencing homelessness. Mr. Neer has those for us tonight, and I think we'll hear from you in terms of some answers to questions that were asked last time.
Yeah. Absolutely. At this point last year, on January 22nd, we had 156 that were identified under McKinney-Vento. And at this point this year, we are at 178.
Thank you, Mr. Neer.
And that's across all age ranges, or is that the high school?
Nope, that is district-wide.
District.
Thank you.
Okay. And I'll probably wait until we get to the policy discussion just to answer some of the questions that came up at our last meeting around some of the policies. I do not have a chairperson's report tonight. Do we have a city council update?
I actually don't have much from the city council.
Okay.
I'm happy to jump into the finance committee review if that's
Sure, if you want to just do a high level of the things that we're not going to be discussing on the policy under new business, since we'll get to that and you can speak about it then.
All right. So we met last Wednesday? No, it was 2 Wednesdays ago we met for the finance committee. I'll skip over. So the first thing to go over is the capital improvement bonds, which we'll be talking about and voting on later in the meeting. So I'll skip that for right now. Number 2, we talked about the city maintenance MOU that the school department has with the city. It was brief in that we were talking about expenses, and we're at about 50% of expenses year to date, fiscal year to date, which is I think where we expect to be. I suppose if you'd like any more detail on that, you can reach out to any of us or Amanda. All right, number 3 is the saga of the ELHS geothermal meter installation. It's no longer a saga, it's complete. I think for a brief moment in time, there was some questions about whether the contractor could get it installed in a timely fashion. If they could not, it would mean that we were only eligible for $675,000 of rebate. If we could get it installed, we'd be eligible for up to $3 million of rebate, federal rebate. So now we're eligible for that full amount. We'll apply for it. I believe it may kick off an audit, is my understanding of the process. May or may not. It's possible. If we receive, or I should say, what we receive of that rebate, it's my understanding will go into account administered by the city, but kind of shared in benefit by the school department for sustainability projects throughout the district. So again, any other questions, feel free to reach out to us. We went through the audit update. I won't get into the specific details, but we did address the deficiencies that were revealed during the previous audit and looked into what those solutions are. Many of those solutions involve increased reconciliation, financial reconciliation between the school department and the city. So again, happy to get into any more detail with you guys, but I think the takeaway is that we did address all of those deficiencies, specifically asked what the resolution was and asked any questions that we could. So that was addressed. LRTC cost sharing, I think we'll be voting on and going over in a little more detail. So that is my update. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Adam. We do have a policy subcommittee agenda linked. They just met last night. And moving on to old business, I will entertain a motion to approve policy AUB JFABD, education of students experiencing homelessness, for a second reading and approval. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Quinn and Pat. Any questions or discussion? I will just comment. So I did follow up with Sasha since our last meeting, and I think Quinn, you had a question about mandated reporting and whether she discloses that with students when she's discussing their situation with them. So everyone in the building is a mandated reporter. The situation of being homeless is not considered a reportable situation that would prompt a mandate, a mandated reporting. However, she did say that when she is in discussion with students, that if she feels they are going to share something with her that would then prompt a mandated reporting, that she pauses the discussion, lets them know that, whatever they're about to share, she may have to report, and that's how she deals with those situations. Does that answer your question? Okay. Any other discussion, questions on this one?
I will say, I know there was a question about the inclusion of, I think it was trailer parks in there. I want to say that reflects federal language, and there's a bill in the Maine legislature to adopt that into Maine statute this session. So I think this is just making us consistent with how everyone else does it.
Okay.
Actually, I'd like to make a motion to amend the term trailer park and to actually nix.
Is that on this one or the next one?
No, it's on this one, isn't it?
I think it's
Jay?
the next one.
Might be the next one. Is that in this policy that we're discussing right now? Okay, so where is that? Mm-hmm.
It's in the next.
This is not scrolling for me. Let's see. No, this is the
Yeah.
R.
It's the
This is the next one.
procedure.
Yep, yep. Okay, so specifically to this policy, does anyone have any other questions, concerns, or language changes?
I just recommended that maybe underneath, on the last paragraph where it says, a description of services that will be provided to children experiencing homelessness, that we change it to students so that it reflects the rest of the terminology in the rest of the policy.
Okay.
Can we
So
call
are
it,
you- sorry?
I was gonna say, can we call that a friendly amendment, or does that need a separate vote?
So are you going to make, so you're making a motion?
Do I have? Okay.
I would say let's go ahead and just make sure it's done correctly, so.
So I make a motion to amend the term children to change it to students so that it correlates with the rest of the document.
On line 2 of the second paragraph. Do I have a second? Okay. All of those in favor of changing children to students on line 2 of the second paragraph? Okay, motion passes. So then, any other discussion about this policy before we vote on it? Okay, so all of those in favor of approving policy AUB JFABD, education of students experiencing homelessness, for a second reading and approval? Motion carries. I will entertain a motion to approve policy AUB JFABDR, education of students experiencing homelessness, regulations, for a second reading and approval. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Seconded.
Quinn. Okay, discussions, questions on this policy?
I would like to make a motion to amend the term trailer parks in, under B for definitions, where students who are sharing the housing of other persons due to loss of housing, economic hardship, or similar reason are living in motels, hotels, trailer parks, or campgrounds. In Maine, there are plenty of trailer parks, and they are not, they are homes and people who are not homeless. So I feel that the term trailer parks here does not really indicate a homeless situation, and I think it should be eliminated.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor. Second, okay, so Pam motion, Corin second. Questions or discussion? Quinn, I think you just addressed this.
Yeah, well, I'm caught between having different language than 2 other levels of government, making things complicated for us. But I also appreciate the point about not diminishing the value of those as homes. On the other hand, from an implementation standpoint, my question is there a benefit to narrowing our definition at all, or is it good to leave it as broad as possible, even if we don't love the implication of all of it, for any exceptionalities that might allow for the district to interpret it as applying to a student who needs help?
And so you were saying that this terminology aligns with something that's currently in the legislature?
Yeah, and that bill in the legislature references federal legislation. I can get the numbers. I didn't attempt to bring them tonight. I'm sorry.
So any other questions or comments on the debate around removing the phrase trailer park? Pat?
I think part of our discussion, I understand the legality of what you're saying, but part of our discussion was not degrading or insulting people who live in trailer parks, because their homes can be just as lovely as anyone else's. I think that was one of the motivating reasons why we wanted to take it out.
Okay. Any other questions or discussion? Okay. So all of those in favor of removing the phrase trailer park from policy, from section B, 1B. All those in favor? All right, motion carries. So now moving on to the approval of the policy itself as amended. All of those in favor, any other discussion before I move on?
In this document, too, there's also a section that says children and not students. So,
where is that?
It's right here.
So under F.
Yep.
So there's 2 sections under F in the second line and in the 4th line, where it indicates again the word children, and you're making a motion to.
So I'd like to make a motion to amend the word children to students so that it can be continuous with the rest of the document.
Okay. Do I have a second on Pam's motion? Corin? Okay. Any discussion, questions on changing children to students in that section, section F? Okay. All those in favor of changing children to students? Motion carries. Okay. Now moving on to the approval of the policy itself. Any further discussion before we vote on the policy itself? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor of approving policy AUB JFABDR, education of students experiencing homelessness, regulations for a second reading and approval. Motion carries. Okay, moving on to new business. I will entertain a motion to approve the updated budgets for CIP bonds to include 3 additional projects: the Washburn security system, roof leaders at the bus garage, and ball field. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Seconded.
Adam, Quinn. Okay. Questions, discussion? Adam, do you want to give us a brief summary of this from the Finance Committee discussion?
Sure. Amanda can.
Or Amanda, either
Amanda
one.
can interrupt me at any point
Either one.
if I don't do this right. Okay, so the Auburn School Department currently has 2 previous CIP bonds that have unallocated amounts. So the fiscal year 21 CIP bond has $121,000, $475,000 unallocated. We also have $69,000 unallocated in fiscal year 22, but we're not going to touch that. So the proposal is to take, I believe it's $71,000 roughly out of the $121,000, reallocate that to 3 projects. Those 3 projects are the repair of the Washburn security alarm system, fire alarm system, the building alarm system. The second project is the re-engineering of a facade.
It's the drainage at Industry Avenue. Currently, it actually caused a little bit of backup, I'll say, and the drainage would move the rain gutter drainage to the back of the building where it wouldn't be. It would drain much better into the sewer system.
Yes, I believe it's currently draining into the parking lot, which is causing issues or something like that.
It's the parking lot and the storm drain that have both been affected.
Yeah.
This time of year gets very icy, and then the other portion is backing up the sewer drain in the actual building.
Okay.
And so the third project is the purchase of a $35,000 ball field tilling mowing machine that will maintain the quality of our new ball fields at the high school. My understanding of these 3 items, the first 2 are kind of emergency items that have come up and need to be paid for. And fortunately, we have unallocated funds in the CIP 21 bond. And the third one is, my understanding, is something that we probably would have asked for in a future CIP request. So I believe we were going to put that into the fiscal year 26 request. So this is moving $35,000 that would have been requested and paying for it with money that we've already bonded. We are already paying interest on, but have come to the end of certain projects with an unallocated amount. So.
Any other questions or discussions about any of these 3 projects? Okay.
I guess the other thing to say is just very succinctly, I know we say this on the city council side, but this has no effect on our budget.
Yes. Thank you, Adam. Okay. All those in favor of approving the updated budgets for CIP bonds to include the 3 additional projects: the Washburn security system, the roof leaders at the bus garage, and the new ball field machine? Motion carries. Okay. I'll entertain a motion to approve the updated cooperative agreement for LRTC, adopting a funding formula based on each district's enrollment percentage to equitably share cost. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Pam, Corin. Okay. Mr. Anier, I think you are the one who's up to give us some background on this.
Mr. Platt said he was ready to roll with this. What this reflects is the EDU 279 that LRTC gets and what we have allocated. The same thing that we have to go through as a municipality, they have to go through. So the difference between what they are allocated through their EDU 279 and the actual costs. And so this is a formula that allows for the difference between those what is allocated and what their costs actually are, and to do it in a way that is meaningful for the region. So historically, for the last few years, Lewiston has been absorbing all of that difference. And so we've kind of reached the place with the expansion of the programs, having the satellite, the number of programs that were there last year, the increase this year to 2 more for 6, and the increase again for 3 more. It's becoming apparent that that can't be sustained, and that each of the sending districts needs to share a portion of the seats that they have over there. And so this reflects the 21% that we share based on the formula, which is about 116 seats, and that's going to continue to grow. But this formula puts into place a stable marker of what to anticipate from a percentage and what the cost will be on a 2-year average.
Great, thank you. Anyone have questions? Pat?
I have a question about the fiscal year. You put fiscal 2025 through 2026. So fiscal year 25, we're in, and 2026 is the budget we're working on.
So this would be for this upcoming budget. We're not
Okay,
paying for
so
the
it's-
past. This is to get in
Okay.
place so that when we reach that cost center, we'll be having some conversation with Mr. Callahan to be able to present. Because typically when we've done the budget, when we get to that cost center, it's been neutral because all of our funds they're not there. So now this is our portion and the contribution to that difference. So that we'll see this again as we do the budget process.
So it's for fiscal year 26.
Yeah, technically 25, 26 for the upcoming budget cycle, not the current budget cycle that we're in. Yep. So, yeah.
We're not paying for the past, but kind of
Right.
are. We've all had that benefit, and now this is just an equitable way for the 6 sending schools to all participate.
I think it's great. Thank you.
Any other questions about this one before we vote?
Again, just to be succinct, this does have a budgetary impact of
Yep.
$74,800. I think some of the conversations that swirled around in our meeting were, well, A, we need to pay our fair share.
Mm-hmm.
That's the right thing to do. And B, not to compare students to other students, but when you look at bang for the buck in this program, the dollars spent in this program go a long way. And so that was a part of our discussion at the finance meeting.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so all those in favor of approving the updated cooperative agreement for LRTC adopting a funding formula based on each district's enrollment percentage to equitably share costs? Motion carries. Okay, we have a list of all of our upcoming meetings. In February, we will be meeting on the first Wednesday like we usually do on the 5th, but then because of school vacation, we will not be meeting the 3rd week. We will be meeting the 4th week of February on the 26th. Do I have any future agenda items or requests for information?
I'd like some information on programs at Edward Little about life skills.
Any other requests? Adam?
Is the State of the Schools report available digitally to be shared with city council members?
Yes.
Is it posted online anywhere that people can access?
It's not posted yet, but it will be.
Okay, so it'll be posted on the district website?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Pam, Corin, all those in favor? And we are adjourned at 7:44. Thank you so much, everyone.